Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time you're tuning in the program called What's Going On FlintTalkRadio.com. I'm George Moss, the host of the program, and we're very glad to have you with us, whatever time you're tuning in the program on FlintTalkRadio.com. And we're here, as you know, every Monday from 2 to 3. That's live, and you can pick up this podcast program anytime at your convenience on your computer set. And every second and fourth Mondays of each month, we have our co-hostess, Ms. Catherine Hunter-Williams, with us. And since this is the first Monday of the month, I'm here by myself. And I'm beginning to get more comfortable without having my partner in crime with me. But it's always good to have my co-hostess here, who I really appreciate in terms of what she adds to the program. We have a lot to talk about this afternoon because there's so much going on, and there were so many good things that are happening over the last 2 weeks. I don't even know where to start in terms of our conversation this afternoon. I think that there are so many things taking place. We can start in a number of places and end up where we want to end the program up at 3 o'clock this afternoon. We just have to quantify how we get there. And so I think where I'll start is to go back to something that we talked about last week when we mentioned the election in Florida 2 weeks ago, where Herman Cain turned the pundits upside down on the head with the victory that he had in Florida. And ever since that time, we've had all the pundits out here trying to explain away, what happened? Because this wasn't supposed to happen as far as how we have played this narrative over and over again. The Republican Party is the party of no. They say no to taxes, no to helping the poor, no to everything. They're the party of no. Of course, one of the candidates in that party said, we're not just saying no, we're saying hell no. And so that was an exclamation point. I think every party says no to some things. The question is, what are you saying no to? Well, 2 Thursdays ago, when they had the debate in Florida, and then that Saturday they had the straw poll in Florida, they went into the poll and said yes. And then the press, having this narrative that the Republican Party is the party of no, decided they had to turn this yes into a no. And so what they did was to act as if the vote for Cain, Herman Cain, who's running stronger in the polls, he's only 2 points according to the latest poll behind Romney. Romney has 27% of the support, and Cain has 25%. So what we had to do here was turn this yes, which was 39% of the votes in the straw poll in Florida, had to turn that into a no and say that the voters were voting not for Cain, but were voting for none of the above. Now, if you can figure that one out, call us at FlintTalkRadio.com. We always have the number streaming across the screen, and you can call and tell us how do you navigate through that minefield and explain that to us, because we're having a problem interpreting that within the spin that they put it in, and we can't make any sense of it based upon how they were trying to drive the narrative. We can, of course, interpret it based on what we think is common sense. And the common sense part of it is that they had to find some way to explain Herman Cain's victory away. We couldn't have this man winning a primary, of all things, in the Republican Party, where we have this party that is in fact the party of no, and the party where the racists are. They are the and these are the persons that came behind George Wallace and Ross Barnett and Eugene Bull Connor and Sheriff Clark and you name them. Somehow they got in the Republican Party, not in the Democratic Party. History put them in the Democratic Party, and now they're members of the Republican Party. This is the kind of narrative we have to expect. So they had to explain away, how is it that given the narrative that this is the party of no and the party where all of the Klansmen have run to, out of the Democratic Party, by the way, and we have to explain how did this happen? How did this man come in here and get more votes in the straw poll in the South, in the Republican Party primary, which doubled the votes of the next two contenders in line. In other words, he came in first, and the next two in line, their votes in the straw poll didn't even amount to what Cain received. And almost it included the next three candidates, almost in terms of the number of votes he got in terms of the next three. But he certainly trumped the next two in line in terms of how many votes he got in the straw poll. Well, how do you explain that? Well, you have to explain it away. Because when you get to the real reason that Cain did so well in this poll, you don't come up with what the narrative has been about the Republican Party being the racist party, the Tea Party, and all these other things they're saying out here, none of which is true. And I'm here to call them on it because I know the narrative is wrong. And I know why the narrative has gotten that particular spin placed on it, because they're trying to maintain what a lot of persons have described as plantation politics, and that's what I would call it. That none of the things they're saying about that victory has any credence. And I don't think that anybody that's actually talking this line of the vote was a vote of none of the above can sustain that when you begin to look into it and make them bring forth their proofs. I've never seen anything like that before. As a matter of fact, someone telling me, and I'm a classroom teacher, retired from the public school system, but still working on the college level, and I can tell you, I've never seen anybody that would make the claim, the ridiculous claim, that when you vote for somebody in the above, I mean, and you say that you voted for none of the above, I've never seen that where you can have a category where you have names in each of the spots, A, B, C, D, or whatever the number of names you have, and then don't put none of the above on the ballot, which will be the last part of what you put down in what will be a multiple choice question. I've never seen anyone make a statement, a spin like that, and say that when none of the above is on the ballot, you're voting for a candidate means that you voted for none of the above. Has anybody out there ever seen anything like that before? And if you haven't seen that before, did you ask a question of why would they even contend with that point? Why would they even entertain that point of view?
Well, especially during the primary where there's so many offerings, why do they choose him overwhelmingly? I mean, that's a large number. You know, in the primary, when you got what, 5, 6 people in the field?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and we all know in the studio here, because we pay attention to these things ourselves, and we always talk about this in the studio about how this is playing out and why it plays out the way that it does. And we all know here in the studio that it played out the way that it did because they understand how that victory in Florida interrupted and intercepted the narrative they've been putting out here in the media before the public about what it is that we are dealing with. And that's another example of, do you believe us, that is to say those in the media, or do you believe your lying eyes? And your lying eyes were telling you that Thursday before that straw poll was taken that Herman Cain was a serious contender for the nomination in the Republican Party. This is no lightweight candidate. In fact, this man has a master's degree. I forget exactly what area it's in, but I know this: it wasn't in recess. It wasn't in what a lot of people are majoring in. You know, how to sharpen your pencil. It wasn't those kind of classes. You know, how to throw paper in the wastebasket. This man has a master's degree in some area of science. I forget exactly what area of science is in, but when I heard about the degree that he had, I was saying this guy is almost like an astrophysicist given the degree that he has. So this is no lightweight candidate. And when he came across, as he did that Thursday before the poll in Florida demonstrated how well he did and how he is now convincing voters that he can, in fact, win this nomination. And that poses all kinds of problems for all kinds of vested interests throughout the United States. It certainly poses a problem to the narrative of the liberal media that's been trying to tell us that the problem is that blacks' situation, for example, is that as it was back in the 1950s when you had the Klan riding around like they didn't know what neighborhood they belonged in, and you had all these other people out here who thought that their best bet in the political arena was to deny people their citizenship rights, maintain a certain voting population, and then stay in power forever, given the narrative that we're going to have segregation today and tomorrow and forever. They were trying to act like we're still back in that time period. Well, when Herman Cain won 2 weeks ago and upset that apple cart, interfered, and got in between the American people and that narrative, that was threatening to a lot of people. A lot of vested interests were threatened by it. And the media was just one part of that. The other part of that vested interest, not the only part, even in this case, but other parts are there. But the other part that was very much threatened by it and is continuing to figure out what they must do to stop this steamroller is the civil rights establishment, which is no longer a civil rights establishment as such. It's a grievance industry. And Herman Cain running an election is really upsetting a lot of these vested interests. I mean, can you imagine, for example, what it means if you have, for example, a Democrat standard bearer for president, and you have a Republican Party standard bearer running for president? What do they do in that case? They could run after 2008, after trying to defeat Barack Obama for the nomination, which is what they were trying to do. If you go back and look at that, you'll see that almost every one of those persons in the Black Caucus was trying to defeat Barack Obama's candidacy, although he was a former member of the Black Caucus, because they knew what that meant. But at least when they elected Barack Obama for president, at least they had still this narrative of, well, okay, but it doesn't mean that America has changed. That's just one person that got through, and it doesn't mean anything other than just as one person who then became the president. And they can also point at the Republican Party as the party where you have this other vested racial interests. So yeah, the Democratic Party, but not the Republican Party, so we can still fight that war. Well, you can see what would happen in 2012 if you took that narrative away from the NAACP, these other, the congressional, I like this one gentleman, they call him the Congressional Caucasian Caucus, rather than Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Caucasian Caucus. What would they say then? I mean, where would they be able to run at that point? And so you see how this unfolding drama has revolutionary implications, because it can do what has not been done before. What we have, just think about that. You have the potential for two black men running in both parties. Can anyone at that point say that America has not gotten past its racial genre that we had in the past in this country? The implications of this election that we are seeing before our very eyes in our lifetime, and we'll be able to pass this on to our children, has phenomenal consequences to it. And that is the fear that we're seeing unfold here. And that's why the press, the liberal media, the New England establishment, had to run in front of the American people to try to explain away and lead the public to an analysis and to a conclusion that certainly did not fit the facts, not at all. In fact, these things that were saying to us contradicted those facts. That Cain was voted for because 39% of those who took part in the straw poll thought he was a better candidate. Who's ever heard of somebody voting for a candidate and they meant by that vote none of the above when Cain's name is in the mix and he's one of the candidates above? It made absolutely no sense, but you have to understand what they're trying to do here. They're trying to change the narrative because they got a problem on their hand. They recognize that. They got a genie out of the bottle. And they've got to put this genie back in the bottle and quick, because if Herman Cain wins in the next primary, or if he comes in second or third in the next primary, then this ship is going to be turned upside down completely, because there'll be no doubt about the fact that he is in fact a serious candidate at that point and a major contender for the presidency of the United States and Republican Party of all things. You see, there's no place for them to go when you got a black person in the Democratic Party running and a black person running in the Republican Party running, and supported by the Tea Party, by the way, which is supposed to be a party of the Tea Party being nothing but other racist members and so on. You take the narrative and run with it. But that is something that's being overturned on his head based upon what's unfolding in the political arena. And they got a tremendous problem on their hand. You can believe that. They've got to try to get this nomination nailed down. They got some boards coming loose at the seams here, and they got to nail these boards down quick, because the longer this campaign runs, the longer it gains traction, and more people, it takes a while to catch up with the narrative that Herman Cain is putting out, the more difficult it's going to be to put this genie back in the bottle, because the American people are looking for someone of this caliber. This has been a very good last 2 weeks. Yesterday, continuing this narrative, by the way, they had Herman Cain on one of the programs that I think is one of the best programs I've seen on television in a long time. Really one of the best programs I've ever seen on television, period. And on Chris Wallace's program yesterday, they interviewed Fred Smith, who is the CEO of FedEx. And I guess they brought him on there because in this climate, they have the FedEx that is making a profit at a time when the Postal Service is talking about cutting out 3,700 postal services around the country because they have never turned a profit. In fact, they've never done anything other than run a deficit. Another example of how the federal government can't run anything because it is a bureaucracy, and bureaucracy can't run anything efficiently. They don't have to be efficient because they can maintain inefficiency and just simply go back to the taxpayers and have them cover that cost, which you can't do that in business. Businesses have to figure out what the efficiency models are so that they can, in fact, run an efficient operation, because if they can't do that, they're out of business. They have got to turn a profit because they don't have access to the taxpayers' pocketbooks. So he was on there from FedEx, and they were on there as a businessman. And they had, and this was after they had interviewed Cain, by the way, and then they brought in Robert Johnson, who you may probably remember him as a person that founded BET. Now, I'm not trying to endorse anything that BET did when he was a CEO and president and founding executive office holder of that organization that put on all those videos where the women couldn't stop shaking and the guys couldn't stop cursing us out. I'm not endorsing any of that. But you have to give him credit, though, for his entrepreneurial spirit, and that was what I saw come through in this program. Now I'm going to set this video up because I'm going to show you a little bit of, I'm going to show you that clip, one part of that clip that Robert Johnson, who, by the way, sold BET, which he founded, and is now the president, CEO of what is called the RLJ companies. That's the RL Johnson companies, that he has a consortium of companies. And this businessman has gone on to bigger and better things in terms of creating more jobs, expanding his own reach. And what he has to say about this class warfare that's been engaged in by this president. He also will mention some things about Herman Cain. So I'm gonna, if that is set up, John, do we have the ready to go? Okay, if that's ready to go, let's just watch Robert Johnson in his comments about this election, Herman Cain, and the business community in general.
Do you want to play the full clip, or do you want to stop
the whole clip, because it's just when he's on there.
Okay.
Mr. Johnson, another business leader, spoke out this week. Ted Leonsis, who was one of the people who helped build AOL, and as you well know, is now the owner of 2 big sports teams here in Washington. He wrote a blog about the president and some of his statements under the headline, "Class Warfare, Yuck." And he wrote this: "Some in the Democratic Party are now casting about for enemies, and business leaders and anyone who has achieved success in terms of rank or fiscal success is being cast as a bad guy in a black hat." Mr. Johnson, Ted Leonsis is a big Democratic donor, as are you, but is the president playing class warfare?
Well, I think the president has to recalibrate his message. You don't get people to like you by attacking them or demeaning their success. You know, I grew up in a family of 10 kids, first one to go to college, and I've earned my success. I've earned my right to fly private if I choose to do so. And by attacking me is not going to convince me that I should take a bigger hit because I happen to be wealthy. You know, it's the old, I think Ted and Fred and I would both sort of take the old Ethel Merman approach to life. I've tried poor and I've tried rich, and I like rich better. Doesn't mean that I'm a bad guy. I didn't go into business to create a public policy success for either party, Republican or Democrat. I went in business to create jobs, create opportunity, create value for myself and my investors. And that's what the president should be praising, not demagoguing us simply because, you know, Warren Buffett says he pays more than a secretary. He should pay his secretary more and she'll pay more.
Yeah, that's the bottom line, isn't it? I like that last point that Johnson made. If the secretary is paying less taxes, I should say, he's saying that she's paying a higher percentage of taxes than he's paying as far as the percentage is concerned. Don't forget, by the way, when Buffett paid his taxes last year, gnashing his teeth and screaming all the way to the April 15th deadline, he paid $6 million in taxes. So I want to see if the secretary paid that much money in the taxes. A lot of little rigmarole kind of things going on here.
You know, I'd like to hear defined fully, what is some of the rich people's fair share? I mean, because somebody else lacks, they got to pick up the slack for everybody who lacks. I don't understand that. I mean, I'm not rich, but I mean, I don't think they owe us anymore. If they create a job, you go to that job, you give your hours for your time, for your money. That's about the end of your involvement in that business. That's a skin in the game, you know?
Yeah, it's an attack upon the rich as a scapegoat, as you know and I know, that they are scapegoating the rich because they are trying to create a distraction away from the policies that are really the ones that's the engine that's really driving this train, and it's doing the American people in an injustice. We can look at the numbers and see the narrative is wrong in that respect, because if you talk about who's paying the tax in this country, the numbers are clear in terms of who's actually footing the bill for the policies that this country is in fact following by these crazy politicians. For example, John, here's one. 0.2%. This is not 2%. This is 0.2% are paying 23% of the taxes in the United States. You're aware of that, and I'm aware of it, but they don't think the American people can figure this out.
Well, look, we got that earned income credit where you're actually paying people money they never earned back to them at the end of the year. Money they never earned. Plus, most of these people are on some kind of assistance anyway, so the money they are getting is not money they earned anyway.
Right.
But they're getting an earned income credit.
They're insulting us with the nonsense. They don't think we can figure this out. And that's where they continue to lie to us, because we are beginning to get it now, and we're getting to hold them responsible for what they're saying and what they're doing. As can be seen by the election in 2010. And I think they can expect more of the same in 2012. That's what got them up there with these distractions. One of which is, by the way, what they have going on Wall Street right now, where they have these the useful idiots, as Lenin would call them, out there in the streets. They don't know why they're out there, and now it's beginning to erupt all over the nation because this president, in his irresponsible moments, and there are quite a few of those going around these days. They're like a dime a dozen, and every time you look up, he's attacking the Wall Street and attacking the wealthy as if they're the ones who caused the politicians to spend what will amount to $16 trillion of money they don't have, and they're going to claim that's Wall Street's problem, that we have a budgetary crisis on our hand where they bankrupted the nation, and that's because of Wall Street. Well, I was just giving you some of the numbers. 0.2%, and I did not again say 2%. I'm talking about 0.2% of the American people make $1 million or more, and of that 0.2%, they paid 23% of all federal taxes. It gets even more delirious in terms of this assumption they're not paying their fair share when you look at the top 1% of income earners. The top 1% of income earners pay 38% of the federal taxes. The top 1% pay 38% of the federal income taxes. The top 5% pay about 58%. And the top 10% pay about 70% of the taxes. That means everybody else, the other 90%, let me do the math for you, the other 90% of the income earners in the United States, which is almost all the rest of the people in the country, are paying the other 30% of the taxes in the United States. So the narrative is obviously disingenuous, and you have to ask yourself the question, why then are these politicians framing that narrative? Well, you see what's going on in Wall Street? That's part of what they're doing. This president, by his narrative, is creating class warfare in this country. I thought the narrative in 2008 was change we could believe in, and we're going to bring the nation together, and we're going to change the narrative in the United States, going to have transparency and so on and so forth. We've gotten everything but that. And this is just another classic example of what the election in 2012 is really all about. And Herman Cain is really throwing a monkey wrench into those who want to act like some disagreement with this president and his policies is about race. If it's about race and the Republican Party is in fact playing the race card, then how are you going to explain, outside of the nonsense you've already said, how are you going to explain a black man standing up as a major contender for the Republican nomination in the party that you claim is racist? You can see what they got to deal with here. And they've got to get this man out of here and try to explain away what this all means. None of the above. And so now we're going to bring in Christie from New Jersey because we don't like the candidates that were out there. That's how they brought Perry in there, by the way. And you can see what is happening in this liberal media, that they are continuing to act like there's a weak field of candidates. And therefore, we have to continue to bring people into the political landscape in the Republican Party that certainly proves the narrative. It's a mistake for them to continue to add to what's already out there because the polls don't indicate those numbers is where the weakness is. The poll numbers indicate just the opposite. This president is running very poorly in the polls. Have you seen the poll numbers of the president? The president's poll numbers are going down. And if the election were held today, I'm talking about the 1st of October, right? If the election were held today, on the 3rd of October, the 1st of this month, the president will go down according to all the polls. That includes MSNBC, the Social Network poll. The president will go down to a resounding defeat. And here's what I would throw out there, just as a way of all of those who are my critics that write on my Facebook page, trying to by calling me names, thinking they call me enough names, I'm going to change my narrative. I'm going to jump into the narrative that's been created by the media, which that's not going to happen. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. I feel like this guy that said segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. I'm not advocating segregation. I'm telling you this. If you think, if anybody's waiting for me to change my mind in terms of where I stand on these policy questions, I would just tell you this. I don't want anybody to fall out in a faint and have cardiac arrest or having other kind of medical problems. Don't be out there holding your breath because it ain't going to happen. I'm going to stand where I'm standing and all the name calling notwithstanding. Here's a question for you. And I'd like to get an answer on my Facebook page sometime rather than all these other things I'm getting in terms of those names that you are using out there, which I find very comical, by the way. And when you get through with the name calling, can you simply slide in a few of your facts that contravene what I'm saying on Facebook? Because what I'm doing on Facebook is running a narrative based on some of the evidence, which I have not seen the other side thinking that's even necessary. But here's my question for you. That those of you that were actually down there in Detroit on Labor Day saying 4 more years, and making that chant. Okay, here's a question. Tell me, what has President Obama accomplished that we need 4 more years of? I don't want 4 or 5 answers to that question. I want you to name one success, one achievement that this president has had that we need to have 4 more years for a continuation of a single policy of this administration. I've got to hear that narrative. Forget the media's narrative right now. Let's talk about this narrative. Send me that. Send me a telegram. Send me a telegram. Oh, send it. Don't send it to my baby. I don't want you to send it to my baby because that would be a problem. That's a song out. But, send me a telegram with that answer in there. Give me one policy achievement of this president that we need to have 4 more years to continue this one achievement. I have got to read this on Facebook today. And I'll be on there after the program is over, by the way. I'll be back home about 3:30, 4 o'clock. I got send that to me. All those persons out there with those names and that and no information, thinking that you can run an intimidation of a person that is unintimidatable. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. And if you think you got a person here that blows in the wind, I didn't make that song up. That was Stevie Wonder. See, I know all these songs. I'm in top 40s guy. And the answer is blowing in the wind. That was Stevie Wonder. That's not George Moss. And the answer is not blowing in the wind as far as I'm concerned. And I don't intend to just do that and put my finger up there and test the atmosphere and see where the wind is blowing and say that's what I believe today. I have some principles that I stand on. And I don't see any evidence out there, none has been supplied so far, that what we're saying on Facebook cannot be evidenced by the information that we bring to the table. And I don't see anybody contravening the information, although they want to make the personal attacks. This election, folks, ladies and gentlemen, in the viewership of FlintTalkRadio.com, I have to tell you that this election is shaping up to be one of the most important elections in our lifetime. It has a tremendous revolutionary impulse to it, and the potential for revolutionary consequences is on. Those consequences are on the table as we speak. And before you catch up with that possibility, that being the fact, believe me, people behind the scenes understand the implications of it, and that's why you're seeing this narrative that where they're telling you that what you saw that you didn't see, that your lying eyes are not telling you the truth. And it's their narrative that's truthful, and your lying eyes have to be dismissed because they have not told you really what's going on. So you didn't see what you saw in Florida. And so what you saw in Florida is what they're saying here in terms of the vote being none of the above. And then we got to bring Christie in here because we don't have a candidate yet that can run a strong campaign against the Democratic standard bearer. Let me tell you another thing that they're not saying, and I'm looking for this possibility. I think that we are possibly looking in 2012 in the Democratic Party for something that occurred in 1964. If this president numbers continue to go down, as we saw in 1964, remember that, John, when Johnson was running for re-election because he'd taken over from Kennedy, and he was wounded because of the Vietnam War. This is probably before your time, John. You're a young man. I'm talking as an older guy that went through this and lived through the experience. And Eugene McCarthy stood up and challenged him, and so did Robert Kennedy challenge him because his numbers were going down. Well, I've been watching that discussion taking place in the Democratic Party. And I don't know if anybody paid attention to what former President Clinton was saying, but I was able to kind of go through there with a little fine-tooth comb, pull apart the comments that he made, and I saw a little bit of a critique, a sidebar criticism of this president in terms of his policies, and that seems to be, pardon the waters just a little bit, to bring in the possibility that this president may well be challenged in the Democratic Party for this nomination. It is not all secured that Barack Obama will be the standard bearer uncontested in his own party. And I'll tell you why. If you go back and look at the election of 2010, there is no question about the fact that the 25% of office holders in the national body, the Congress of the United States, Barack Obama was not on the ballot, by the way, but he was on the ballot indirectly by the fact that it was his policies people were going to the polls and voting upon through other candidates. when you turn 25% of the voters, 25% of the voters went there and turned 25% of the officials in Washington out of power in 2010, and it looks like those numbers that the president had then are going to be much worse than they were in 2010 as we go toward the election 2012. If it's viewed as the president doesn't have any coattails, in fact, the emperor doesn't have any clothes. If that gets out, then look for the party members who basically want to retain their position, because these are people, as Ron Paul said in one of the issues of Time magazine about 2 or 3 months ago, these people are power mongers that we have in the elected bodies. They are power mongers and they're demagogues. That's what we elected up there. And that's what they're trying to tell us, what kind of light bulbs we can have and what kind of things we have to eat and all that, and how to regulate our lives, how you can't smoke in the bars, everything. You have to drive with your seatbelt when getting in between you and your own conscience. These people are power mad. They want power. And anyone that threatens their power is going to be opposed. And if it's in their own party, if they in fact find that the top of the food chain, the president's a liability, they will challenge the president of the United States. It's not conspiracy. It's about power. It's about retaining power. And this president has become a liability given his poll numbers. And I don't see any policies that he has that's going to bring those numbers up. Let me just say a word about the clip that we just saw. Before we talk about this Cain's this contingency that's taking place inside of the Republican Party, Johnson was making a critical point, one that we need to understand in terms of economics, because if you think that creating class warfare is going to solve this problem by just attacking the rich, one gentleman said it this way. He said class warfare has never created a job, and it doesn't. But if you think that the rich are not investing because they do not want to expand their businesses, which when you expand your business, you expand your profit, that they don't want to create jobs here because they're selfish, you don't understand selfishness. You don't even understand greed, which I was arguing on another blog that I had in terms of arguing Ayn Rand's position, which I think she nailed it in her book called The Virtue of Selfishness. I think you should read that book. Selfishness and greed are good things, because I've never seen anyone that goes out here creating a job because they want to build your family nest up. The reason why someone goes into business and somebody in fact creates jobs is because they want to expand their own wealth. And you can only do that by expanding business, employing more people that can give you more production, which makes you have more wealth. That's greed. That's selfishness. But you can't be selfish in a room and make money. I mean, selfishness and greed is what motivates people to get out and do something productive. You don't think Paul Zuckerman, who created Facebook, did it so that he could become wealthy? He's a billionaire right now. He did that because he wants money. And when you want money, that's greed. But you can't make money by sitting in a room saying I'm the greediest person in the world. You have to go out there and do something. And you have to produce something in the process. And so Johnson, who made a lot of enemies in 2008 when he came out and supported Clinton at a time when Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton were running neck and neck, black people were really astounded and angry about Johnson supporting Hillary Clinton. At least he did it out front. Where the rest of these vultures, now he was not one of the vultures, but the rest of those guys were acting like vultures. They were nipping at Obama's candidacy from behind the scenes because they knew that they could not come out in the front as Johnson did and oppose Barack Obama, because all the black community was in fact supporting this man, 95%, and they couldn't, as civil rights leaders and other hobos, come out against this man because they knew how it would play in front of the black community, and they'd throw the stone and hide their hands. And they threw a lot of stones at this man from behind the scenes. People couldn't see it because they weren't paying attention to some of the things that were going on insidiously behind the scenes as they were trying to sabotage this campaign. I can name some names here. And it wasn't just Jesse Jackson, and it wasn't just Jesse Jackson sitting there in the aftermath talking about he wanted to do whatever he wanted to do to the man gonads. That was long before that. go over and look at Jesse Jackson's statement over there in France, for example, and ask yourself the question: why would a man with no parts of the campaign, he wasn't even a member of the staff, wasn't even close to it, over there talking about what Barack Obama would do if he were elected to the presidency in terms of his relationship with Israel, and why would he say that going into Florida? Well, you see, that was part of the behind the scenes, hoping not to get caught with the sabotage. But they were all doing that, including you, John Lewis. All of you guys are out there trying to stop this steamroller because you thought you would lose your narrative of black folks as victims if this man got in. But you were able to go to another part of the narrative and say then, okay, the party, the Democratic Party is the ship and everything else is the sea, and therefore the enemy now is the Republican Party. You have to always have some devil, you see. You have to create some narrative that there's a devil. Barack Obama got the wealthy as that he's running against the rich right now and got people out there in the street on Wall Street and other parts of the country demonstrating. They don't even know why they're out there demonstrating because they've been told to go out there, and because they are part of the people that have this herd mentality who have suspended their thinking. They can be led by the nose to do anything that the useful idiots have always done in history.
Moss.
Yes.
Did you see the sign that they're hanging? Some people had. They had this huge sign that says, "A job is a right," and that would beg the question: who is supposed to be obligated now, because it's a right, to provide that job? That's
a good question.
Yeah.
If a job is a right, then somebody's obligated to give you a job, and who would that person be? That's you don't have to do anything to have the skills that would make the job that you get a productive enterprise for the person that hires you. Just go in there because you are owed a job, another entitlement. I was arguing this weekend, John. I love my enemies. I keep my enemies. I keep my enemies close, and my friends close too. But I keep my enemies close too. I can watch them. And I was arguing this past week because I'm trying to make some enemies. I'm working on that. I'm trying to do some tilting the equation back to some sane discussions that we have that we need to have that we're not having. And I was arguing about this diversity. I'm on the college campus. I'm telling you, they were arguing about we need more diversity. So here I am on Facebook with all these people saying we don't have this number of people, we don't have this many person on the campus. We need more diversity. And I'm saying on the Facebook, to the chagrin of all the ones who are on my website, that we don't need more diversity. We need more merit. And anyone telling me that a college should be about diversity, you know what you're really saying? You're saying that you don't think people need to study, because all diversity is about is that somebody didn't work hard enough to earn the right through his merit to be on the college campus, and that's why he's not there. And why don't you tell these students, this is what I was arguing, and I'm going to argue this until I'm blue in the face, why don't you tell these students we're not giving you anything? That if you want to be on that college campus, go and get your books open, get them out that locker, take them to that classroom and sit down, listen to that teacher and do your work. That's affirmative action. And until you do that, those campuses are going to look like they're looking without you in your diversity plans, where you want to make up the difference. Because you've not told these students you got to get those books out and study your lesson and take those books home and do your homework. You haven't told them that because you don't think they will listen to that message. So you want to fix it on the other end, where you're going to say we need to be diverse and bring people on these campuses who are not qualified because they didn't do anything in school, and you want to make it popular. You want to make the issue about diversity. Any college president that jumps into the issue of diversity as if you get to bring folks on this much and that much and have quotas on your campus should be fired right on the spot. Have no right to this this position of running the school. And did you see last week, John, when they had this football player? Did you see that? I don't think you saw this. They had a football player, I think he's in 6th grade, he's 11 years old. They had a rule here, I forget what state he's in. He was scoring too many touchdowns. So they had a rule in place that because every time he touches the ball, he scores a touchdown, which makes the other team feel bad. So they got a rule now where this guy had to sit down because he's scoring too many touchdowns. He's a 7th grade student being punished. In other words, if you don't work down to a standard, in other words, excellence, if you work up to a standard, you're penalized. If you work down to a standard, that's how our nation is. We're now becoming a nation we are a nation now that demands mediocrity. They set this young man down. Do you know what the message is? That if you are excellent, you're penalized for being better than everybody else. I go to these assemblies sometimes. I'm speaking in these programs. I was in Detroit last year speaking at an assembly. I'm on the stage waiting to make my presentation. It took me about 5 years to get up there to the microphone. You know why? Because they had a contest in the school, and everybody and their grandfather had to get an award. There was one kid, I guess they gave one kid at the end an award because he was still breathing by the time the assembly was over. I couldn't, I couldn't believe it. I'm sitting there waiting. You're not paying me anything worth talking about. You barely pay for my gas money. Don't waste my time. I'm sitting up there on the stage. I won't call the school out. They have me there every year, so I don't want to kill the golden goose. But you didn't pay for my gas money. That money that y'all pay, you know what the gas price is. I bet I was able to pay for my car fare down there and back. But I'm sitting on that stage, knowing that I don't have the check coming, and then you waste my time by giving everybody in the school an award because they participated in an essay contest. Now only one person won, but we can't have anybody feeling bad. So everybody that participated is on that stage, past the student body, on that stage, getting an award because they didn't want anybody to go along with hurt feelings. Well, you know what? In my day and time, when we had sanity and not mediocrity as a standard, is that you had one winner. And then the rest of you were losers. So what did that do? It made you go and work harder because if you lost, you weren't good enough. And that was the standard that they had. I have to say this. I like to always give a credit to my 12th grade teacher because I'm going to tell you something. She made me find a gift that I didn't even know that I had. And I just have to say this over and over again because I am so glad that she held me to a high standard, called me to her desk. Here I am. I just would write these papers out. I never thought I had a skill. I was just writing and required. I'm going to do my homework, go to the library, do my research, write the paper. Because I was trying to get out of the situation I was in. And she called me to her desk, Miss Reed. I love you to death still after all these years. And she called me to her desk and she said, Moss, I don't think you wrote this paper. Tell me what's in this paper, because I don't think you wrote it. And if she had found out you didn't write it, I'll tell you right now, you're getting an F in that classroom. You're not going to plagiarize in her classroom because she has standards that you wanted you to meet. And if any affirmative action was given in her classroom, it's because you met the smell test. Your merit was such that you were able to overcome this adversity, which comes out of not studying, not being prepared, and you want to just pick your effort up. I'm not going to give you anything. You have to earn it. And she called me up to her desk and said, I want you to tell me what's in this paper. And I didn't stumble because I knew I had written it. I wasn't mad either because she had made the accusation. And I told her what was in the paper. I started telling her about it, maybe about a minute into what I was saying. She waved me quiet. She had this authority about it, waved me quiet, told me with her hand, shut up. She said, okay, I'm convinced. She said, you wrote it. Then she waved me back to my seat. She said, now, go, like she said, go sit down. Go sit down. Now, I could have done what students do today. You know, she falsely accused me, and they could have, and how they do right now, they think they got to show how they got to get their ego out on the table and show them that they're going to come at you now because you accused me. I'm mad, and I'm going to show you how my anger can be expressed. You know what I did after she made that accusation? She said, you wrote it. Go sit down. You know what? I didn't just walk back to my seat. I didn't have a swagger. I floated back to my seat. And the reason I floated back to my seat is because here's what I was thinking. Here was this remarkable teacher that had standards that I knew I had to meet to pass her class and make the best grade in it, who I respected because she was not lowering the bar down to where we were, trying not to take our books home, trying not to learn anything, thinking we could learn through the osmotic process. When she made that accusation, I didn't walk back to my seat. I floated back to my seat. I was walking on a cloud. And the reason for that was because I knew this in my own mind. If she thought, as good as she is as an instructor, that I cheated on that test, I knew then I was pretty good. And I can't stop writing. That's why I'm on Facebook 4 hours a day. not only just trying to teach, but I write. And when I write books. Because I have not stopped writing since the 12th grade. She helped me find my gift. And when I found my gift, which I just got a call, by the way, from the University of Michigan, I wasn't supposed to mention that because now they know where to find me. And now they can get on my Facebook site down there and attack me some more. But I just got a call today by someone saying they wanted to give me and another person another grant because they read the narrative that I wrote on the grant they gave me to do a study down in South Carolina on the Gullah community down there that we did 2 years ago, and they finally read what I did, what I wrote. One person wrote a play, and I wrote the history narrative on it, and now I'm finding out that the research department has said they want to. I haven't even applied for a grant. I haven't even applied for a grant. They say we want to give you a grant. And I don't know how many times that happens, but I do know when I'm in the meeting with these professors and those who have all the D's behind their names. Okay, don't get me started on that because that'll get me fired. But I do know that when I put something on paper, it's not going to read like a third grade wrote it. It's not even going to read like a person with a PhD degree wrote it. It's going to be reading higher than that. I'll leave that alone too. But I'm just saying here that she helped me find my gift because she held a standard up. And when she held a standard up, I began to work up to that standard. And if you do that over a period of time, guess what happens to you? The same thing happens when you exercise your muscles. You do enough chin-ups over a period of time, you can do more chin-ups the longer you go with exercising those muscles. And the mind, the brain is the same thing. The brain is also a muscle. It's a non-physicalized, instrument in terms of the mind, but the brain can be developed. That is a physical specimen that can be exercised and developed also. And she helped me find that gift. Well, what we're doing right now, we are just lowering the standards, and this young man has to sit on the sideline because he's too good, and we can't have the other team feeling bad about it. So they got this young man learning that excellence should be punished, and we have to have everybody a winner on the football field. I do what you need to do down there. I think this was in, I don't even want to call what state it is. It's insignificant because that's what's going on in all the states, going on in all the schools. If you're not working down to a standard. And used to be a time when the teachers wouldn't do it, your homeboys would do it. I was chased home every day, twice on test day, because if I scored high on the test, I had to run home. At least it was the students doing it, where they were making you try to go down to a standard. Now we got the authorities doing it. They're going to make you work down to a standard of mediocrity. They got the officials doing that now. And this young man, I was watching him in the classroom and listening to him talk, very brilliant young man, and they're telling this young man that excellence, in fact, is to be punished and penalized, and so on. This young man may well be the next Ben Carson, may be the next Wilt Chamberlain. I don't know. I'm not just in sports, but the next Ben Carson, who is a doctor, could be the next Charles Drew. I don't know what this kid would do, but when you start punishing people for excellence, you're not telling them to be great. You're telling them to be mediocre. And they're telling this boy he can't play football because of his greatness, and you're making other team members feel bad. Well, feel bad. But get out there in the football field and practice harder and learn how to stop somebody that's running through the line. Change your plays. Learn something about defense. Stop daydreaming out there in the football field. Maybe that'll help. Maybe running by you because he's focused and you're not. You ever thought about getting other team members to play up to a standard like Mrs. Reed asked me to do in that classroom? Would that be of some help? All right. Enough of that. Back to Herman Cain, because you give me on that, I'll be on that for another 2.5 hours. We don't have that much time here left. We're running out of time. I just think we have to pay attention here, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to pay attention because some things are happening in our lifetime that we can tell our children about and our grandchildren about, that I was there when this revolutionary moment came about in the United States. I was there to play a role in it, have a part in it, active part in it to make this happen. Because we're seeing something now that's taking place that has never taken place before. Do you remember when all of you got excited about having two black men for the first time in the Super Bowl? When the coach from Chicago and the coach from Baltimore win the Super Bowl game, and how that was such a big deal. Can you imagine how big a deal this is in terms of having two black men running for president of the United States? Ladies and gentlemen, that kills a lot of conversations that are taking place within the veneer and inside of the land space and in the venue of the grievance industry. Because where do you run to if that occurs? You got a black person running in the Democratic Party and a black person running in the Republican Party. What is a narrative under those conditions? It's going to be very difficult to sustain this argument that racism explains the condition that's taking place in the national black community. And when that gets out, they begin to look at some other things then that they're not present looking at, because they continue to define the narrative where we're not supposed to believe our lying eyes, but believe what they are saying to us. And that is the problem they got right now with the Herman Cain campaign for president of the United States. I want you to watch this narrative as it unfolds. You heard it here on flinttalkradio.com first and foremost here, that you need to pay attention here to what's taking place, because there is revolution in the air and not a shot being fired. We can have revolution in this country without firing a shot, because we can use the ballot box, but use it more efficiently and in a more prolific manner than we've used it in the past to make a statement that we're not going to have business as usual. We want quantitative change in America. And we don't want persons telling us what we ought to do based upon them trying to lead us to a conclusion that we ourselves did not make. And that's what Cain was saying, wasn't it? On Chris Wallace, he was saying that this was no fluke. The American people are not taking the media narrative, and they're thinking for themselves. Want you to stay tuned, because this is going to raise a lot of eyebrows before it's over. And this campaign is bigger than Herman Cain. It's as big as the American landscape itself. And changes is in the air. And all of you out there that are paying attention and taking part in these primaries is making it happen. This is a change we can believe in. Not change by a political figure, but the change the American people themselves are going to bring about. And that's what you're doing right now. I want to thank you for all of your hard work. Stay tuned to flinttalkradio.com. I'm George Moss again of the program called What's Going On, and we look forward to, in fact, continue this conversation next week when I have my co-hosts with me, Ms. Catherine Hunter Williams, who is the co-host of the program, and we'll be continuing this narrative, this conversation next week. Until that time, as always, I want you to follow your dream, because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.
You gotta have a dream. Everybody's got a dream. God gave it to you. If you don't have a dream, how you gonna make a dream come true? My friend, what's on your mind?